I'm Greg Giuliano. I'm an executive coach, organizational change consultant, and author. I believe leaders have the power to shape the future and change people's lives. I also believe people who challenge the status quo and go beyond usual and ordinary are rare. They're willing to go to the edge and push farther, over and over again. When I find these ultra leaders, I love to talk with them. In each episode, I talk with ultra leaders to learn how they do what they do and how they keep growing as leaders. I promise you a full dose of ultra leadership from other ultra leaders just like you in every conversation. We're at the edge of another episode. Let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of Ultra Leadership. My guest today is Chad Baugh. As Referwell's Chief Revenue Officer, Chad oversees all revenue-generating activities for the company, including sales, marketing, product pricing, and customer strategy. His more than 20-year career in healthcare includes, most recently, revenue management at Teladoc Health, where he delivered triple-digit revenue growth within the large and mid-sized health plan market segment. Chad served as general manager, complex case management for Best Doctors prior to Teladoc Health's acquisition of the company in 2017. At Best Doctors, he had P&L responsibility, including product design, sales, account management, finance, legal, and operations. He has served in leadership roles at Edifex, Allscripts, DB Motion, and GE Healthcare. Chad earned a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from the University of Phoenix and has an MBA in Strategy, Finance, and Entrepreneurship from the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. And like my dad, he is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Thank you for your service, Chad, and welcome.
Thanks, Greg. I'm super happy to be here and look forward to having the conversation.
Me too. So based on our conversation before we came on, I want to start with a question that I normally close with, and that is, imagine you're giving your commencement address and you have a big close for your commencement address. So tell me about what you're saying to all these new graduates about to throw their hats in the air.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I thought about it quite a bit. And I think, the thing that really I hear a lot of people talk about is passion. And many people tell everyone, hey, if you find your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. But I think most people, when they hear that, they really struggle to find their true passion. They don't know what it is. And especially new grads, because they haven't started working yet. So a large portion of them are probably like, well, how the heck do I find that? But what I have found and what I've pushed people to do is, stop trying to just figure out your passion and stop trying to just move up every 6 months, but spend some time in what you're doing to become a really deep expert. Know everything about what you're doing. And when you have that level of expertise, people start looking to you for guidance, advice, and then leadership. And I honestly haven't met a person who doesn't light up when they're talking about something they're an expert in. And when you talk about somebody who's passionate, they're usually lit up when they're talking about, what they're passionate about. And what I'm getting at is when you go deep and become an expert, most people become passionate about what they're an expert in. So my advice is find something that you just even generally like and go in and become a deep expert, because you will become passionate and then you'll enjoy what you're doing, and then you won't have to work a day in your life, and you don't have to go out and find a passion that you don't know what it is.
Yeah, that means there's two sides of the coin. So being an expert, there's passion there.
That's right.
The way my dad would say that, if he ever saw you sitting around, he would say, hey, go make yourself useful.
Yeah.
Right. And so becoming an expert at something, you become useful. You become someone who can help other people. And if you're helping them do something that you are expert at, you're going to be passionate about it.
Right. And everybody enjoys teaching somebody, especially when you know the nuances and you can understand where they're struggling. It just, as you're helping people, you start to realize how interesting and exciting what you're doing is. And it can be the most simple, mundane thing that you think is a repeatable process, but new people have no idea how to do that thing. So you become the expert. And then people will start offering you other things to do, like, hey, you're so good at that. Could you help over here or do this or lead this team, et cetera? It opens up a lot of things that I think most people don't really think about because they're always trying to get to the next thing.
Right.
And this drives you to the next thing because people will tap you on the shoulder once they realize you have the capability to become that level of expert in what you do.
Yeah. So that's part of leadership too, is right. You become
Right.
expert at enrolling people and teaching people and helping people be their best. It's not telling people what to do, it's enrolling people and helping them be the best that they can be. So I'm curious. So, one of the things that I like to do with leaders that I coach is to have them be really intentional about what they want people saying about them. And so we do an exercise, it's like match game. I ask them to fill in the blanks. I am a blank leader who helps others blank. So, how would you fill in those blanks?
Yeah, kind of thinking along the same lines. I think that, the first thing I really want people to feel about me is that I'm an authentic leader. And what I mean by that is just that I come from a normal chair. I dig in, I get my hands dirty. I'm part of what I'm saying to do, and I'm happy to be a doer as well. And I want to be an authentic leader who helps others see future possibilities. And that sounds big and grandiose and all of those things, but I think about it this way. As you help people to see what their possibilities are, or you're trying to, a lot of time it comes down to how do you shift their mindset just a little bit. So if you can tell them a story or put together something that's an analogy, and all of a sudden they click, right? So you give them an analogy of what you're trying to get them to digest or where you're trying to get them to go. And analogies or stories elicit emotions. And when they start to lean in because they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that totally makes sense. You got them. And now they're in. And then you can talk about, well, what would happen if we did this? And what would the future be like if we got here? They really start to lean into that. So I'm big on analogies and storytelling and trying to make things very simple to understand. So when I say get people to understand their own future possibilities, it's bringing them back to where they're struggling right now and what happened if you got to this new place. And then they can fill in the blanks a lot of times themselves.
I love that because it's not telling them what to do, that through that storytelling that you're unlocking things for them. You're
Right.
helping them unlock things for themselves.
Right. Right. And so we're going through this exercise at my company right now. And our company does a lot of different things in scheduling. Basically, at the end of the day, we help patients schedule care and we do it for other businesses, et cetera. Well, when you try to explain that to somebody, it doesn't, as either a client or a prospect or somebody else, it doesn't elicit like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But when you talk to somebody about the story of, when you're trying to schedule whatever visit your doctor told you to schedule, and you realize you don't have the right documents and you can't get a hold of the right person, et cetera, it feels like you just walked into the DMV. And everybody says, oh my gosh, yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. So now I've got you looking at it from a different lens. And now, what if when you walked up to the DMV, before you even walked into the door, somebody opened the door and handed you your license, which you were going there to get? You knew you had to go get it. Like, that's the idea of what's the story that makes it feel different to them? And then what's the future possibility that it could be? And we're trying to lead somebody to. And that's where I think that just the way that you put the analogy in front of somebody can really help them to kind of get the passion and emotion into what they're trying to do.
So as you unlock the potential for your team and you help them to get into a process where they're changing
Mm-hmm.
because, oh yeah, makes sense. And they're moving into that. and your team is working well together, what's the behavior that you're looking for from your team that tells you this team is performing at a high level?
Yeah. I think the number one thing that I see when teams are really working well together is they're open to asking questions of other people on the team for advice, and they're open to sharing where they fell down. So if we're in a team meeting and people are giving ideas on how we could do things better and asking for advice or information from somebody else on the team, or giving an example of, hey, I was just in this meeting and we tripped over this, or we made a mistake here, or I saw this, could we use it in the future? That's where I see teams that are really working well together, when they're just open in what's happening and they're trying to find ways to make things better. And a lot of times all that aligns with what we've already talked about, right? If you see where the future is and you're excited about going there, you're generally very open to, hey, I'm trying to get there, but I tripped over this. Do you have any ideas? Do you have any thoughts? And that's where I see teams really coming together and working well, is when you're open to that level of dialogue. You're just being authentic. You're in the space, you're working hard, you're not afraid to share and be vulnerable to people. And when they start giving you their expertise and their advice, you're ready to take it because you've already opened up to absorb it. So it just kind of all feeds on itself.
So that level of vulnerability and curiosity is a big ask for a lot of leaders when they end up sitting in a chair on a team like yours. They're probably leaders of other teams.
Yeah.
They had to have a certain sense of, I know my stuff in order to get there. How do you get them to then, shift from being a knower? Chad put me on his team because I know how to run this part of the business. And all of a sudden you're asking them, hey, forget that for a while, but be vulnerable. And instead of focusing solely vertically, let's engage horizontally. And it's a different mindset and skill set. Let's be vulnerable. Let's be curious. How do you get them there?
Yeah. Sometimes it's a tough transition for people, but if you bring them into a team that's already there, it's a much easier kind of transition, right? Because the other team members will ask them for their expertise, and other team members might even say, hey, there's this thing that either you or your team is doing, and I see an opportunity. And if they haven't felt like the other members of the team are being shamed because somebody brought up a challenge in their part of the organization, they naturally feel okay when somebody brings something up or asking for advice or whatever. So I think there was a book I read. It was about the CEO of Ford. I think his last name was Mullally.
Yeah.
And he was intentional about making sure his leaders brought issues of what was going on in building the cars. And instead of asking why they were either off schedule or why something didn't fit or whatever, he elicited the advice of the rest of the team of, hey, where have you seen this before? How have you overcome this problem? And if you have a team that's already doing that, I think it makes it really easy for somebody else to kind of step into that. It's a little bit harder if you're starting from scratch, but then that gets back to, I think, one of the things you and I talked to, which is hiring the right people, right? There's nothing really more important than building the right team. As you have an opportunity to do that, sometimes you step into a team and you've got to kind of push the team to make the changes you need. But if you have the opportunity to hire, being an expert and being passionate about hiring the right people and not just taking the next one that comes up in front of you is one of the most important pieces of building a successful business.
Yeah, but Alan's book was terrific, and his model of keeping his team aligned is a fantastic model. But the intention around, right? It's about being intentional there. So you're intentional, very intentional with your team around how are we going to treat one another? How are we going to communicate with one another? What can our stakeholders expect from us consistently? And so, when you're looking to add someone to the team, that what they want, you want them to fit into.
Right.
right? And so getting to that place of intentionality of here's how we're going to work together as a team, that's a journey, because that doesn't just, you don't just cross your fingers and hope that that happens. You put in a lot of time and effort to make sure that that happens.
You're right on. I think you have to bring the energy you want people to return to you. So if you bring energy of anger or putting people down or not sharing personal stories, et cetera, they're not going to do it either. I mean, in fact, today I was late to a call with my team by like 3 minutes, and I like to be on time, but I got on and I'm like, guys, I am so sorry. My son literally just fell in the lake, and he's 11 years old. He had gone fishing. It's a lake nearby, and he came in and he's drenched. And I was like, what is going on? So he literally fell in the lake. But because we've had a lot of conversations about personal stuff, and I'll share my priorities in just a second, they totally got it. They're like, oh, that's that. And then we laughed about it. And, more stories came out about things like that have happened for them. And I make a very clear statement to the team, and I repeat it pretty regularly, which is your priorities when you're working with me are number one is family. If something comes up you have to attend to, that trumps everything. Number two is clients or customers or external prospects. Like our focus should be on making our clients and our prospects feel successful, supported, et cetera. And then it's internal. And then it's vendors that you work with. And then all that stuff is last. Mm-hmm. So at any time when they're doing something and they're deciding, do I need to go to this meeting or not, or whatever, that's just the priority you have to think about. And it makes it very clear as to whether you need to be in that meeting or you need to do something else. And everybody can use that trump card very easily. I have a family issue, or, hey, a client booked over this or whatever. I have no problem with that. So, because I'll do the same thing with the team and they'll see it. So I think you have to bring the energy and the way that you want your people to show up. I think you have to bring the exact same thing to the table.
Yeah. So do as I say, not as I do, doesn't work with kids, and it doesn't work with teams.
That's exactly right. You got it. Yep.
You got to walk the talk. So I'm curious that we all get in our own way sometimes. So with all your great intentions, what are a way that you sometimes get in your own way, and what do you do to remind yourself and get yourself back on track?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I thought about this a little bit the other day, and the number one thing that I do, which goes a little counter to the very beginning of this, is there are things I'm an expert in and I love doing them. So getting stuck in trying to answer all the questions. One of the things my career has been built around is engaging with people, especially customers, and making them feel like we're going to take care of them. At GE, I ran something called a CSO, which was a customer satisfaction opportunity. And I was basically the backbone for anybody who was going to call the GM of the business irate. And it would actually ring me instead of them. So I learned very quickly how to handle upset people and get them to calm down and feel like we're going to support them. So I naturally am inclined when a customer or prospect or somebody on my team has a problem to dig in really deep and try to answer all the questions. The thing that gets me out of it is, quite frankly, right now is just time. I have a notebook that I constantly have my priorities in front of me. And I look at that because I know if I don't get those things done, the business isn't going to move forward. So it's just being intentional throughout the day of looking at my priorities, and I set time specifically on my calendar that is blocked, and you're not supposed to take it, but I've told people, hey, if it's a customer thing, you can write over I call it deep work, and so that I can think, you can write over it with customer stuff. But other than that, I like to maintain it. So don't set internal meetings over that. But that gives me the moment to sit back and say, okay, what are my priorities? What am I focused on? Right. What do I need to get done right now? And that also lets me back out of what they're dealing with and push them to say, hey, I think you can solve this. If you get stuck, call me. But other than that, I want you to try to do it. That's how I do it today.
I love it, right? I mean, you're practicing powerful attention management. That's the way I think
Yeah.
of it, right? So where am I placing my attention? This is mine, it's important, and it's urgent. And anything else gets delegated or deleted.
That's right. That's right. And it forces you not only to think about your time, but what I've just seen, especially recently, is, we're a young team and we keep adding new people. So how do you get them to feel like they are the owner and they don't have to come to you to ask every question and to get every answer and to get approval on everything? So I let them know early that I want you, if you don't get an answer from me in time, I want you just to move. Like, do whatever you think is right. If you do that and something's wrong, we'll correct it, but there's no harm, no foul, because I told you to do it. And as they lean into that, they start to see more and more that they can take on a lot more and do more and feel empowered. And I'll support them and I'll take the heat. Like, if we really screw something up and they've done exactly what I asked, that's not their fault, right? I'm on the hook for that and I'll stand behind that. So that's another way I try to push things out and delegate, is just, look, I've put you in this position because you're an adult and you're a professional. I expect you to behave like one and act like one. And I want you to make decisions and move things forward. If you really get stuck, I'm always here. Text me, call me, but I want you to try to get the answer. And if I don't answer when you have something and you need to move, then just move. Because I hired you in a position that needs people that will just move.
Yeah, I love it. So we're near the end, and I always like to close my coaching sessions and my team meetings with an expression of gratitude. I'm grateful for you being here today, but I'm curious, as you think about life in general today, what are you grateful for?
Well, a couple of things. I know the audience can't see us, but I can see you and I can see the flag in the background there. And I'm grateful to be talking with somebody who appreciates the service and has a family member who was in this service. That always kind of warms my heart and makes me think that, the things we're doing are beneficial and we're doing the right thing. The other thing is, I'm grateful my son fell in a lake because it's a laugh. He had a great time. He's tried to FaceTime me from fishing. He's just deeply in the last 2 days gotten into fishing, and to watch somebody who nobody even pushed him into it. He just found something that was exciting and jumped in with both, literally, figuratively, jumped in with both feet. So to have somebody that has that level of joy, I'm grateful for that.
Awesome. Well, we will leave it there. And thank you again for your service. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a great leader to your team. On behalf of your team, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Thanks for the opportunity. And I appreciate all the questions, and hopefully we can learn a little bit more together as we move forward.
100%.
Great.
And thank you for listening. This has been another episode of Ultra Leadership. We will see you next time.
If you're enjoying Ultra Leadership, please take a minute and give us a review wherever you find your podcasts. And please stay in touch. Sign up for our Ultra Leadership newsletter at ultraleadership.com. Now, before you jump to your next meeting, I invite you to reflect on what you heard today. What stood out for you? What insight might you want to incorporate into your leadership practice? Until next time, remember, as a leader, you always have the power to shape the future and change lives. So go to the edge and push farther. Thanks for listening.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.